Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it is officially afternoon. I am Anthony Farnell, Chief Meteorologist over at Global News, and I'm also a longtime supporter of RBC Race for the Kids. I am honored to welcome everyone. I know people are still coming in, a little slow starting, trying to log on, but our numbers are going to be growing, I'm sure, throughout the hour. And I would like to welcome everyone to Sunnybrook's third virtual town hall on youth mental health, presented by the Family Navigation Project and made possible thanks to RBC Race for the Kids. This year, it's a special one. It marks the 10-year anniversary of the RBC Race for the Kids in Toronto. And I do remember way back when, how this race, when I was first seeing it, how it impacted me and my family. And I'm just happy that I'm still able to take part every year and now do this town hall as well. So I am in good company. I'm not alone here. Since the first race, more than 57,000 participants have participated in this, and they've taken a step forward for youth mental health. RBC Race for the Kids supports Sunnybrook's Family Navigation Project, or FNP for short, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about this within the next hour. This vital resource connects youth and their families to mental health and addiction services. So thank you all for joining us for this very special and important conversation. Chances are everyone on this call has been touched in one way or another from mental health, whether it's a health concern or maybe within your family or your network of friends. It is important that we make space, like we are here today, to embrace and openly discuss mental health. So the demand for youth mental health care is it's growing. It's growing every single year. The coordinated navigation and access to timely, personalized care, it can make a huge difference in youth and, of course, their families as well. While Ontario is fortunate to have many mental health care services, finding the right support can be challenging, and it can also be an isolating experience. That's where FNP comes in the first youth navigation service of its kind in Canada. So over the years, demand for FNP's expertise has grown, and so has the program itself. What started as a team of just 5 is now a team of 26, who together serve on average 70 youth and families every single month. So today, you're going to hear from members of that talented team, mental health experts, and lived experience partners who will talk to us about transitioning through life stages and the unique challenges as youth move from teenagers to young adulthood. I know we all remember those days. Support for the entire family, including when to seek help and how to talk to youth about it, and navigating mental health access post-pandemic, which I think we're getting to that point where we're post-pandemic, even though we are still virtual here. As a virtual care becomes more embedded in clinical practice, that post-pandemic is going to become a key issue. So now I do want to, without further ado, introduce our esteemed panel, who will soon answer some of your most pressing questions. Panelists, I'll ask each of you to please give a little wave so we can match a face to your names. And let's start with Dr. Anthony Levitt. He's a medical director at Sunnybrook's Family Navigation Project and chief of the Hurwitz Brain Science Program. Welcome, Dr. Levitt. A lot of you are familiar with Dr. Levitt. Dr. Manideepa Ravi is a child and adolescent psychiatrist who specializes in mood disorders, anxiety, ADHD, and other concerns. Welcome, Dr. Ravi. And there's Jillian Thistle, is a navigator at FNP. Welcome to you. And of course, Troy Maxwell, Chief Operating Officer at RBC Capital Markets, who's going to share with us his family's experience with FNP. So in a moment, Troy will tell us what we can do to keep today's conversation going after this hour is done and how you can join RBC Race for the Kids. there's still time. Yes, you can still register. The race itself takes place in person on September 17th. You can still do it virtually as well. It starts at Mel Lastman Square, or wherever you are, whatever's easier for you. So let's hand it over quickly to Troy. Troy?
Thank you, Anthony. And I'm really excited to participate today with Jillian, Dr. Ravi, and Dr. Levitt. The Family Navigation Project really does some exceptional work, and that's thanks in no small part to the dedication and commitment of these three. So thank you to all of you. And good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the team here at RBC and RBC Capital Markets, I want to acknowledge the medical professionals and staff at Sunnybrook for their exemplary leadership and strength throughout the pandemic. They've done tireless work, which still continues. And every day you're on the front line, you're our heroes. And for that, I and all of my RBC colleagues around the world want to thank each and every one of you. As Anthony mentioned, this year represents the 10th anniversary of RBC Race for the Kids in Toronto. What began as a single race in New York back in 2009 has quickly become our signature worldwide fundraising event. In fact, since it began, the Race for the Kids has raised close to $75 million globally for charities and organizations promoting youth mental health and well-being in more than 30 cities around the globe. And here in Toronto, we've been proud to work with Sunnybrook Hospital and the fantastic professionals who help bring FNP to life. To date, more than 57,000 Race for the Kids participants have raised more than $18 million for the Family Navigation Program. It's really exceptional. And this is a vital program. Not only does it provide much needed help for youth and their families, but it also sets the gold standard for what hands-on, community-driven support can achieve. And events like Race for the Kids and the generous contributions of donors across Canada and the GTA help the Family Navigation Program carry out its mission to match young people and their families with the resources they need to get them through what are some of the most difficult periods of their life. So please, if you haven't yet, make sure to register for this year's race on September 17th. You can choose how to participate, whether that's in person on race day or hybrid at your own pace. Participate on your own, take part with your families, friends, lend your support to this worthwhile cause. It's critical that we have programs like the Family Navigation Program. Youth mental health issues can be among the most challenging things that families will face. Having that essential link into the healthcare system, the link that Sunnybrook and FNP provides, can make all the difference in the world. Thanks to all of you, and I'm looking forward to chatting more during our panel. And Anthony, back over to you.
Thanks a lot, Troy. And yeah, we are going to hear a lot more from you and the other panelists coming up. And I know a lot of you are excited to get to the Q&A portion. We're going to get there in just a sec with our panelists. But first, I do want to introduce and hear a bit from Dr. Anthony Levitt, who founded FNP in partnership with patient families. So FNP is the first program of its kind in Canada since its launch back in 2013, basically a decade ago. FNP has helped more than 4,500 youth and their families from across Ontario navigate the mental health and addiction system, which is no easy feat. So over to you, Dr. Levitt.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And by the way, great name. So thanks everyone for joining this afternoon. FNP started with the sort of passion of a group of parents who had felt that they had been lost in the system. They were confused and frustrated trying to find the right help for their children. And to them, the system appeared like a black box. And our goal has always been to shine a light on that. Our committed and compassionate team have transformed the lives of thousands of families with mental health and addiction. And just to be clear, we are Sunnybrook's Family Navigation Project, but we serve the entire community. You don't have to be a patient of Sunnybrook or only get Sunnybrook services. We take patients from all over the GTA and we find services wherever they're needed. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and that's especially in terms of what's going on with the pandemic. In 35 years of practicing psychiatry in the province of Ontario, I really have never seen anything like what's going on right now, and the tsunami of mental health issues that are occurring. And of course, we've all been part of this. We all know there's been social isolation, there's been interruptions to schooling and work. The job market is strange, to say the least. Family dynamics are stressed, and there's also the anxiety about the virus. And in fact, we believe that the contracting the virus can lead to long-term effects, including changes in people's mental health. I also want to just add a brief word here that in fact, for some families, it's been a positive effect. People have come together, they've spent more time together, they've had more time to deal with issues. But in general, I would say that more issues have become apparent, I think, because of the close contact, but also the social isolation, social pressures. There's been this sort of perfect storm, and the need for support for youth has grown. So in the first 8 years of the functioning of the Family Navigation Project, we had about 15% of our calls coming from youth themselves, but that number has almost doubled since the pandemic started. We're getting calls from youth who are really reaching out to find help. And Dr. Ravi and I were talking about this a couple of months ago, that what we've seen in our own practices is dramatic increases in things like obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, anxiety, and substance abuse as a result of the pandemic, and also as a result of exposure to the virus. Now, we know that Family Navigation's model works, and our goal is to empower youth to do more and to help more. With philanthropic support, we've just launched a first ever youth advisory council. It's the first ever youth advisory council at Sunnybrook, and probably the first at any major teaching hospital in the province. We're very proud of it and proud of the work they're doing. And with more youth-friendly and youth-focused services shaped by the youth themselves, we're going to continue to improve our access to care. So as many of you may know, Family Navigation Project is supported entirely by donors. It's the only way we're able to meet this growing demand, and it's because of generosity from donors such as the RBC and all the supporters who come to the Race for the Kids. That's how we got started. That's how we keep going. So thank you for all of you who are listening today for your support on this important journey with us.
Thanks, Dr. Levitt. So yeah, let's get right to it. Let's kick off our panel discussion. And just a reminder to the audience, we've received countless thoughtful questions from our viewers. It's really been a great response so far. So we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible. There's some that are all overlapping, so we're going to group them together. And also new this year, we have a chance to answer some questions live. So please feel free, use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout our discussion. If something comes up, you can just ask the question, and if time permits, we'll try and answer it. If not, we'll get back to you afterwards. And then this entire recording will also be available for you whenever you want to access it. So to start things off, I want to ask the first question to Dr. Ravi. Here it is. It's from a caregiver in the audience. Sometimes I don't know what typical youth behavior is, or what could be a sign of a mental health concern. How can I tell the difference? Dr. Ravi?
That's a great question. And it's one that I hear a lot from parents of how can I tell what's the difference? I know there's changes that are happening, and how do I tell it apart? And, we all have this image, a bit of a surly teenager or someone who locks themselves in their room. But in reality, teens and youth do talk to their families. They spend time with their families. They share meals with their families. So I think it's important to look at, first of all, what are the differences and in comparison to how things were. And I think it's important to look as well at how they're behaving with other groups as well. So is this a situation that they're only pulling away from their parents, or are they also pulling away from their friends? Are they pulling away from school activities, or are their academics declining? Do their friends or teachers have concerns about how they're presenting? Have they stopped doing enjoyable things? So this is a hint sometimes for parents. Are you hearing them talking and laughing with their friends? Are they still doing their groups and clubs and enjoying time, or have they really isolated from everything? And these are some of the clues that helps parents to identify if there's something to be concerned about, and trust your gut, right? Talk to your family doctor, or seek some help if you're concerned.
Some good points. So I know parenting can be overwhelming at the best of times, but another parent asked, how can I prevent myself from getting overwhelmed with the stress of caring for my unwell youth? So Dr. Levitt and Jillian, let's just hear your thoughts about this and how parents can kind of cope with that.
Yeah, this is a really great question, because we often hear parents saying that when their youth are really struggling, they're putting a lot of focus and energy in taking care of their youth, and not necessarily putting that focus and energy in taking care of themselves. So the first thing I would encourage parents to do is really not to be afraid to reach out for help. And this could be through personal supports, or it can also be through professional supports. So with regards to personal supports, if you find you're struggling and you need some extra help, you can definitely ask for some help from family and friends. And then when it comes to professional supports, there are a lot of services that are available to family members of someone who is struggling with a mental health issue. So that could be one-on-one support for a parent to access with a counselor or a therapist, to learn ways to support themselves throughout the process and also support their youth. And then there's also group supports that parents can access, where they can connect with other parents or other family members who may be going through something similar. They have that opportunity to share and connect with each other and really learn ways to support themselves, but also to really focus on that self-care piece.
And if I can add to that, we did a survey of the province of Ontario. We found that fully 1/3 of parents were caring for a youth with a mental health issue or addiction. So it's very common. Reaching out to family members, reaching out to friends, you're likely to find kindred spirits. You are not as isolated as you think you are, and it's not as rare as one might think it is. It is actually almost statistically normal to be looking after a youth with a mental health or addiction issue. So, and the truth is that many parents and other parents have been there and done that. They have been through similar situations, and they have some neat strategies and tactics. And even though all kids are in different situations, all families are in different situations, there are some very common themes that can be helped either by professional counselors, by self-help groups, and by friends and family.
Those are some good points. On a similar vein, we got another question, and I'd like to hear what you think, Troy, about this. Might give your staff, maybe when you hear a question like this, I feel constantly burned out at both my job and also at home. How can I take better care of myself, either family? Troy, you hear that occasionally?
Oh, I hear it quite often, and I'd really start by saying that if you're feeling this way, you are by no means alone. And I think that all of us feel this way from time to time. And it's often we have on my teams at RBC and all companies, we have a lot of really high-performing people that really want to do it all. They want to do it all at work, and they want to do it all at home. And inevitably, there's a clash. And there are so many ways to approach this issue. And I'll try to give a few strategies from my own personal experience, and then and really how to balance all the demands on you and all the demands on your time and your energies. And I think it starts with really some deep thinking on your part about what's causing that stress, what's causing how you're feeling, and how can you influence positive changes into the environment that you have, whether it's at work or at home, and then communicating with others how you'd like to make some changes. And some examples at work might include speaking to your supervisor about your workload, trying to get more flexibility into how and when you do your work, or sometimes even sharing your frustrations with your coworkers to get things off your chest can help from time to time, at least in the immediate sense. But it may be that your team needs more resources, but all this really involves some thinking on your part, some communication, talking to others, so you can help to find a solution or develop a solution to make that environment better. And if you've tried all this and it's not working, there are other resources available to you through your HR business partner at RBC, your employee relations, or our employee assistance programs and hotlines. If your issue is becoming more serious and it's impacting your mental health, my best advice is to get help early and reach out to the employee assistance line, your family doctor, and other supports that you have. You know, I'd also say when talking about work-life balance, and in particular the work versus home life, I think everybody needs to find their own balance, what works best for themselves. We all need to switch off from work. And in my case, that's usually 7 in the evening till 7 in the morning every day, and for a good part of the weekend. But for you, or for other individuals, depending on your family needs, taking kids to daycare or school, picking them up, things may look completely different. And what really matters is that you carve out time for the things that are most important to you and your family, for your family time, and to ensure that you're present. When you're present with your family, you're with them, and when you're at work, you're present at work, and really find that balance, make it work for you. I'm sure there's lots of trial and error in that, but know that it's faced by all of us, and it's really, I think the best thing is really to communicate what your needs are, and to help bring in the others around you for pulling forward those solutions.
Yeah, now's a good opportunity too, because I know it's getting rebalanced again, right? With post-pandemic, some people are being maybe more from work in office, so it's a good time to kind of set your boundaries and figure out when's family time, when is work time. So thanks, Troy. Our next question has been asked by many youth, always with a different perspective. So I'm going to get Jillian to answer this one. This is a question: how do I find services and providers that understand my issues? For example, I'm 22, Black, and identify as non-binary. I'm finding it difficult to understand someone who gets me. So Jillian, how would you answer that?
Well, first, what I would encourage you to do would be to make a list of the things that you would like some support with. So are you looking for support with anxiety? Is it something to do with school struggles or school avoidance? Is it around relationships? So really take a look at what you're looking for support with, and then also what you would like support with, or what type of therapist or what type of support you think could be helpful for you. So do you think it would be an individual therapist? Do you think it would be a virtual support? Would it be a group support? Do you think it would be in person? So make a list of some things that you would like some support with, and then also make a list of what you think could be helpful for you within a support. And then really make sure that you feel empowered to advocate for yourself, because it's okay to ask for what you need and what you're looking for. And when you are looking at services, make sure you're asking those questions for what you feel would be important to you. And just another thing to mention is if you are having troubles locating those particular services, feel free to connect with FNP, because what we do is we would really gather a deep background of your unique situation, what you're looking for, what you found helpful or not so helpful in the past. And we'd really put it all together so that we can help you to connect with a service that would be most appropriate and would be a good match for you as well. So if you've been trying and you're really struggling to find those supports, take a deeper look and see what you're really looking for. And if you are still struggling, there is other support that's available, and we'd be happy to help.
Thanks, Jillian. So we have another question from youth. I don't want to be a burden on my family, who I know are already struggling. So I've not shared with my parents that I'm seeking mental health support. Is that the right thing to do? Dr. Ravi, can you maybe lead a response on that one?
Sure. It's another one that I hear pretty frequently, that, I haven't shared with my parents everything, or they only know a little bit about what I'm going through, or not at all. And my first answer to that is that that's very generous, that's very thoughtful of you, but this is your parents' job. They can take it, they want to take it. Most parents want to be there and understand what's going on for their youth. And in fact, some parents will worry more if they think that you're going through something and they're getting the sense that there's something going on, but you're not sharing with them or you're not telling them. So that can actually kind of cause the opposite of what your intention is with sharing, like saving them from that burden. Now, if you're in a situation where your parents truly are suffering from maybe their own mental health challenges or stressors, or your past experience has been that maybe you have shared and the reaction wasn't exactly what you were looking for or what you wanted, then you could also start by reaching out to another trusted adult, like another family member or a teacher or your doctor, to start with some guidance. Like Jillian mentioned before, FNP is also available when, even sometimes when youth are just in those early stages of trying to figure out what's going on. And as a side note, that kind of sneaky voice telling you that you're a burden can sometimes be a tricky voice that could be a symptom of depression or past experiences, kind of tricking you into thinking that people can't help you. So it's all the more reason to seek out supports, to be your own boss, to kind of fight against those thoughts.
Okay, so I got a question from a parent related to navigation. This is for you, Jillian. So my son has been diagnosed with OCD and is on a waiting list for therapy, but it'll be almost a year and can't find anything suitable to help him in the meantime. What can I do until then?
Yeah, so this is something that we commonly hear as well with wait lists right now. So in a practical sense, what you could start by doing is requesting to be on a cancellation list. So that means that if there is an appointment that's canceled, then your youth might be able to be seen sooner and be pushed up a little bit on the wait list. If the appointment is still going to take some time, what we really encourage parents to do is to reach out for specific supports regarding the diagnosis that your youth may be dealing with. So these supports could be educational resources, it could be online resources, or it could be reaching out to a professional who has that expertise in supporting family members of someone with a particular diagnosis. And that way the parents can learn some strategies to manage in the home while they're waiting, learn that support for themselves, and also how to best support their youth. And sometimes what we actually hear is when parents are able to access that support for themselves while their youth is still waiting, things actually start to improve in the home just by parents learning a little bit more about that diagnosis and learning ways to best support their youth. So sometimes we do see those improvements while the youth hasn't even been seen yet. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at resources and supports that might be available to you while you're waiting.
Yeah, I think that's important. Get on that wait list, and then at least, I mean, days are ticking by, but you at least have something, a silver lining on the horizon, and hopefully it gets better quicker. So just to build on that response, Dr. Ravi, can you field this question from a caregiver? My youth was better able to manage their anxiety during lockdowns and is now struggling with the greater return to normal. How can I support them?
Again, something that we hear a lot of these days, where there is this anxiety of returning to normal, and some youth did feel more comfortable being home and away from external stressors, and they were able to be in their own space and have their own supports and their comforts there with them. And as parents, it can sometimes feel intuitive to try to convince our youth that they're fine. So no need to be anxious, like you always do well in school, everyone likes you, it'll be totally okay. But this kind of pushing to one side of the picture can sometimes push our youth in the other direction, and it can inadvertently lead them to feeling unsupported. So we can support our youth sometimes by doing practicing curiosity. So how are you feeling? What is going on for you today? And just listening, encouraging them to talk to us. And that can be really difficult as a parent to not jump into problem solving, but that stopping yourself from speaking is actually doing a lot. Some parents will say, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just listening to them, but that is actually doing a lot and doing a lot of work. Validating what they're feeling, like, yeah, it is really weird to be back now after so long, or you haven't seen these friends in so long, what was that like? And then if applicable, sometimes modeling a situation that you as a parent maybe in previous years for yourself that you've been through and that you overcame. Sometimes we can think to ourselves that it's better to say something like, oh, well, I never got anxious when I went to school, to try and show that anxiety isn't necessary. But what can be more powerful is to say, oh yeah, there was that one time where I felt really nervous and then this is what I did. And that kind of seemed to help me. So actually modeling that you may have been through something and struggled through it and came out on the other side can be quite powerful. So really starting to work in baby steps, starting with something not too scary, moving from there, and having some gentle hopes and expectations that they can manage and that you're there for them and that it's hard.
Thanks, Dr. Ravi. So yeah, just kind of building on that again, another post-pandemic related question. So one of my kids has an anxiety disorder and is really worried about the pandemic, while my other child without the condition just wants to return to normal life. How do I support both of my children and help my child with the anxiety disorder cope? So maybe we'll start with Dr. Levitt with this question.
So I think it's important to understand, firstly, that anxiety is in the range of normal human experience, and anxiety has a purpose. For example, if we weren't anxious about our exams, we probably wouldn't be as motivated to study for them. Or if we weren't anxious about an upcoming game, we wouldn't give as much thought to preparation. So anxiety serves a positive purpose in our lives. When we're talking about an anxiety disorder, that anxiety has also led to changes that disrupt or disorder the person's lives. And then at that point, the anxiety no longer serves the same positive purpose. But I think it is reasonable to understand that the youth, one of your children that's anxious about returning because they have an anxiety disorder, that anxiety is something we all share. And there's some compassion one can have for someone who's anxious about our current situation, and compassion you can have for yourself. It's okay for me to be anxious about return. There are things that are unknown. I can allow myself. All the other stuff that comes with it, the changes in my concentration and sleep and appetite, etc., those are part of a disorder, but the anxiety is understandable. And so there may be anxiety in both children, one which is associated with the disorder, one which is associated with the return to school or return to work that we all have. The most important thing, and we've talked about it before, and Dr. Ravi has identified, if someone has an anxiety disorder, they need help in overcoming all the symptoms and the way they start thinking about the world and themselves. That can be through counseling, it can be through medication. And I think parents can get some help. There are many, as Gillian has spoken about, there are online, in-person and virtual services where parents can get support on how to deal with anxiety in the youth. The other thing I'd like to add here is that no one really likes to feel anxious. It's not usually a very pleasant feeling. And so when our child starts talking about anxiety, we often don't want to talk about it. But if you can sit there and tolerate it and hear them out, you can actually help them by just listening, as Dr. Ravi just said.
And Jillian, can you maybe share some support for families as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing in this situation, to just add to what Dr. Levitt said and a couple of things that Dr. Ravi has said, is I think really listening and understanding where each of your children are at can be really helpful. And it can also be helpful in determining what type of supports would be best for them. So, it sounds like they're very different children. They're experiencing something very different. One of them might feel most comfortable with a virtual support, and another might feel more comfortable with an in-person support. So I think really just listening and figuring out, just kind of getting curious with your children, giving them that opportunity to share and just being open about the whole process can help you figure out what type of support will be the best match for them. And then you can help them with connecting to those supports.
Thanks, Jillian. All right, I have a question from a youth. So I'm going to get Troy and Jillian to chime in on this. I'd like to hear both your thoughts. I've had a really tough 2 years, and my parents don't seem to understand what I'm going through and are making me more stressed. What can I do to manage my feelings, my parents to listen to me? So Troy, I'm going to start with you if you feel comfortable. I know you have a family experience with FNP prior to the pandemic, and maybe just tell us how kind of that's informed your responses now.
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying that it may not always feel like it, but your parents are your biggest fan, and your most effective advocate to get the help you need to feel better. And as Dr. Ravi said, it's their job. I think really you might want to try to talk to them about how you're feeling, but make it at the right time. So not in the middle of an argument, for example, but at the right time when it's quiet, and ask them to help you. And one of my kids, who's now in her late 20s, experienced some pretty significant depression issues in the mid-teens. And I know two things now that I didn't then. First, that she was really great at hiding her issue. And second, I initially had absolutely no experience in recognizing it or being able to offer much in the way of understanding and help. And my daughter and our whole family did eventually get help, but not until things escalated and it all came out at once. And once my daughter's depression was diagnosed, it was only the beginning of a process of finding the right help that she needed. And that's where the Navigator program came in and helped my daughter start on the road to recovery, and help the whole family actually understand the issues that she had, her depression, understand how we could help, and also help advocate for finding the right resources out there. And that's the Navigator program was really critical toward there. So I just say the help you need is out there. It's often hard to find. Your parents really need to be part of that solution, and the family navigation program can be great help. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. I know it hasn't been easy, and it's still, I'm sure, not easy to talk about that, Troy. I am just going to throw it to Jillian just for her response as a navigator to that same question.
Yeah, so I think like what Troy said, your parents are your biggest supporters, and it may not always feel like that. So if you haven't had a chance to give them that opportunity to have those conversations, to share with them how you're feeling, I would encourage you to try to share and see how it goes. If you feel like you need a little bit of support with how to have that conversation, or come up with some strategies with how to communicate that with your family, I think that is a good place to start as well. So you can always connect with a mental health support to kind of start working through some of the things that you've gone through, and also work to build some strategies on how to have that conversation with parents. But if you do feel comfortable now, you can definitely open that door with them and try to have that conversation and see how it goes, and then connect with the mental health supports in the meantime.
If I could just add something, there is a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. And even though it seems it's kind of a simplistic approach, it is sometimes a simple approach, just as Dr. Ravi and Jill have suggested, and you might find some benefit from that.
And I saw you shared that in the chat, so you guys can find that book. Thanks, Dr. Levitt. Let's get to another question. This is from a youth, and I know it's probably fairly common. They get diagnosed, and they're just maybe stressing even more. Is there any hope that I can live a normal life after receiving whatever the diagnosis might be? So Dr. Ravi, can you just maybe answer that?
Yeah, it can be really, it can be a big moment to hear about a diagnosis. And sometimes it can be relieving to know that there's a name for what you're going through. And it can also kind of shake up what you think of yourself and your identity. So the short answer to whether you can live a normal life is yes. And it's a little cliche, but what is normal? Everyone is going through something. And it is true that some people have been dealt a more loaded hand than others. But it's what you do with it. It's a journey, and it can truly create something amazing and some amazing individuals and amazing strengths on the other side of it. And I often speak with my young patients about the amazing and successful and happy people in the public eye who have experienced mental illness. So having a bit of a champion around mental illness can be really helpful to provide support to someone to know that there is hope. Finding peer supports and other people who are going through or now are on the other side or continue to struggle but have changed the way they see things and how they function. So finding the right supports for you in the community. And there's a Japanese art, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it justice, but as far as I know, it's called kintsugi, and it's known as the beauty of imperfections. So it's broken pottery that's been mended using golden or other metallic lacquer, and it creates this beautiful piece at the end that's unique, and it's still whole, but it's more exquisite than the original, some might say. So I sometimes use that example too with folks that I see, and I find like it's a nice way to think about things. So you can live a normal life after.
Yeah, and the big question is, what is normal, and do you even want to live a normal life? I know, I mean, you can learn to live with a condition, or you can think of it maybe as a superpower down the road if you're able to adapt and think of things differently than the norm. So thanks, Dr. Ravi, for that. The next question is from a parent. So Dr. Levitt, I'm going to get you to answer this. Can there be a sign of a mental health issue if my child is overusing their device? How can I tell? I'm falling into this. How can I tell if the time they spent on their phone is an issue? And if they're spending too much time on it, how can I help them?
What a very difficult question to answer. I'm going to go back to answer part of the question by going back to what Dr. Ravi said. There are evidence that someone has a mental health or addiction issue by changes in their behavior and all the changes that Dr. Ravi mentioned to begin with. The phone becomes complex because most youth will say, this is how I communicate with the world. This is my interaction. And so you can't, don't take it away from me because I'll have nothing. But I guess the issue is this. And this be true of anything. It could be a substance, it could be internet, it could be phone, it could be gambling. If someone is spending inordinate amounts of time to the exclusion of other healthy activities, that's your first and biggest sign. So if time on the phone is being spent to the exclusion of social activities, someone who used to play sports or used to be out with friends is now spending time on the phone and not doing those activities, that's the first big sign. But usually what happens is there's other things and those other things are what Dr. Ravi described earlier. So changes in school performance, changes in family interactions, changes in concentration, focus, and eating. If someone is truly overusing something, whether that's gambling, internet, or device, it starts to impair other aspects of their life. Other aspects become dysfunctional or disorganized.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So we've gotten a few questions every year. We kind of do, and even now that it's technically legal for anyone over age of 19 to consume cannabis. So I just have this question. My youth is over 19. Half my friends say yes, it's okay, it's safe for them to consume it. Half say no. How should a parent approach this aspect?
Yeah, so look, there are many compounds, drugs, substances in our lives which are both positive and potentially negative. So for example, narcotics. We would not be able to do much of the surgery we do without narcotics, or treat people who had a fracture, yet narcotics are an incredibly dangerous substance. Alcohol is fantastic for cleaning surfaces and wounds and in certain treatments. But on the other hand, in the case of addiction, it's dangerous and damaging. And the same is true for cannabis. There may be some positive aspects to cannabis, but similarly, there are negative and dangerous aspects. And what's most problematic is if you believe one or the other. If you are just closed to all good or closed to it's all bad, we won't be able to see how cannabis fits into our society. And so, half the friends say it's good, half the friends say it's bad. It's both good and bad, and we've got to keep an eye open. So someone may be using cannabis and saying it's good for them, but you can see it's not good for them. All those things we talked about addiction before, they're happening in their lives. So rather than to be on one side or the other, I think it's important to keep an open mind to the fact that cannabis may have some therapeutic advantages in some specific medical conditions, but it also has some very dangerous aspects. And just as an example, there are many people who say, I take cannabis because it helps my depression. But the vast amount of literature out there, every single scientific study that explores this shows that cannabis leads to increased rates of depression, increased episodes of depression, and poorer functioning between depressive episodes. So whilst it may appear to the person themselves that it's beneficial, it often isn't.
Yeah, as a parent, it's always, I guess, the open mind is something that I think kids also appreciate. The fact that you're not just black or white. It's kind of always a bit of a gray area. So I do want to ask this next question to Jillian, and let's just probe a little bit deeper into supporting youth through major transitions. And of course, just being a teen is a transition day to day, month to month. But we've heard a lot of questions along the lines of, how can I support my youth as they transition to adult care when adult services do not involve caregivers as much as child services did? So, Jillian, can you maybe answer that?
Yeah, for sure. This is something we also hear a lot from parents is, they've been involved with supporting their youth, and then all of a sudden their youth are an adult and they're not quite sure where they fall into the picture now. So again, I'm going to take this back to a common theme that's been coming up today is, I think it starts with being open with your youth. So really letting them know that, now you're an adult, but I'd still like to be involved in a way that works well for you. So asking them how you can still support them and still be involved in a way that they feel comfortable with, and really just having those open conversations. So, it could be, your youth may say that they'd like a ride to appointments, or maybe they'd like to keep you updated on their appointments once a week. You can have these creative conversations and come up with different ideas and different strategies of how to still be involved while also supporting and encouraging your youth's independence at the same time.
And Dr. Ravi, maybe just if you can add, just kind of going from high school to university, that's always a big transition. Parents are a little bit worried. Are there going to be services? Is this shock to the system going to impact my youth? So maybe just comment on that.
Yeah, it is a big transition to go from high school to university. You're going from kind of more structure to open structure and, self-independence. So I think the advice I would have for parents is to, like Jillian said, talk to your youth and see, how would they like you to be involved? What do they need? And you know your youth really well. You know where they might have the gaps or where they might struggle. So have those conversations in advance. And consider supporting them to start taking their own steps towards independence. So they, for example, may want to contact some places themselves, and you can offer some support on the sidelines, maybe help to find the information or to check in with them and see, what happened with that phone call. And in a way that you've come to an agreement that this is how you want to do things together. And universities will often have their own resource centers and things like that to help students who are transitioning, at younger ages now. 17-year-olds are not there's no grade 13 anymore like there was when I was in high school. So there are more supports in the university system as well. So really I encourage my patients to seek those out in advance and have that conversation about how you want parents and youth to communicate.
And Dr. Levitt, just kind of to go from there, from university to whether it be work life, career, or just independent living away from parents, is there other advice you can give for that?
I think Troy said it well, and Dr. Ravi. Parents, the job of parents or caregivers doesn't really stop at a particular age. There's still an investment. Now, I encourage young adults to make that important transition to independent living. That's absolutely important. But there is no harm in taking advantage of the fact that your family wants to help you. The family is often the carrier of great health information and life information, both for you, your siblings, and ancestors. And this is important health information that can be used elsewhere. And also, they're going to be advocates for you. And sometimes they know the health system better than you might know them and might know it. And they can be great guides. They can be navigators as well. So I'm not saying that one should be reliant on one's parents one's whole life. It's really important to make that transition into independent adulthood. But there's nothing wrong with relying on people who really want to help you.
And Dr. Levitt, while I have you, I'm kind of curious about this as well as others. Why is it that all mental health services haven't transitioned back to in person? Is maybe some youth do better in person, others like the comfort of their own home. Is there a reason for that?
It's developing, and more people and more services are going in person, and over time it will happen that we return. But there is a tremendous advantage for some people for virtual services. Some families, some youth who are addicted to internet, then you're actually giving, if you do it virtually, you're actually giving them the thing they're addicted to, and it just doesn't work out. But for a lot of people, it's tremendous. And I always say to people, I have been busier clinically during the pandemic than any other time in my career, not just because there is a whole lot of need out there, but because it is so easy to get a hold of people, to be connected. People don't miss appointments because they were late in traffic. People don't have to pay for parking, negotiate childcare. There is just so many advantages to having virtual services. So I think the virtual and hybrid in-person style of treatment is here to stay. Interestingly, in our surveys of the population of Ontario, people still prefer face-to-face. The majority, I should say, majority of people still prefer face-to-face. So it will come back. There'll be more and more face-to-face over time. The virtual, though, is still going to be part of our lives from here on in.
And I also find it interesting, the transitions that have happened since the beginning of the pandemic. A lot of, even at a corporate level, there's just this emphasis on mental health, and it just becoming, whether it's a benefits package or just becoming a higher priority for a lot of companies. So that's exciting to see. And I'll just end just with Dr. Ravi. Let's say your youth is diagnosed with a prescription medication, and you just want kind of more information on that, the safety, what it could maybe be combined with. Is there a good resource for that?
So my usual advice is go to the prescriber of the medication. If they're the one who has said that this would be helpful, they're going to be the best place to ask around side effects. Is it right for me? What you're experiencing with the medication. So that's the best place. There are some trusted websites that are well vetted. So from, well vetted, like academic centers and things like that, those are probably okay to get your information. I usually guard against just Googling things, because you'll get a wide variety of information, and often it's not accurate. But I think check and check with the prescriber and check with some well-vetted websites if you need to.
Thanks, Dr. Ravi, and thanks to all of our panelists here today. I know it was a packed lunch hour, and we got some great support, and I know others are going to be watching this afterwards. I'll explain that in just a sec, but I just wanted to just give a round of applause to all of the panelists for coming out and giving us your time today. And also thank you to our community for joining us and submitting questions. This is the third year that I've been part of this, and many of you as well, so it's great to see different questions. And of course, the need is always going to be there. So we're just grateful for everyone to be part of this. And FNP, as you know, is supported entirely by donors. So the only way FNP can make the growing demand for its expertise is because of the generosity of partners like RBC and, of course, our community, including the many supporters of the RBC Race for the Kids. So many of you have asked what you can do to help. Why not get moving for a great cause? It's one thing to donate, but to be out there and to show your support, it just goes a long way. And registration is still open for the 2022 RBC Race for the Kids. Participation, it's simple, it's free. You can do it in person. You can do it virtually in your own neighborhood, your own town. And registration also gives you access to the many tools that help you raise funds for a cause, and also gets you ready for the next town hall, perhaps next year. So yeah, as I mentioned, in person and virtually, visit rbcraceforthekids.ca to learn more. And if you are asking questions via the chat, or if you have questions that maybe come up, you can also check out rbcraceforthekids.ca later this week, because we're going to be posting this video recording of the town hall. It's going up on the website. So join me one more time. I want to thank RBC and FNP for today's town hall. To Jillian, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Levitt, Troy, I want to thank you all as well. And to everyone that is on the call today, I hope you found this past hour informative. And I know it's back to school. This was really a big stretch for a lot of people to take that hour time. So we answered a lot of urgent questions. And yeah, once again, give yourselves a pat on the back, and hopefully you found this helpful. And hey, if you didn't, I'll tell you that it's going to be sunny and warm right through the start of the weekend. So I'm going to get back to my weather forecasting. Thank you all. And this concludes our third Youth Mental Health virtual town hall. Thanks, everyone.